So that is the insurance broker selection. Just briefly, and I think most everyone knows, in the last month, we had two proposals, about below 4 hours, that myself and our attorneys, Tom Bobbitt, Chris England, Rihanna, what is your title? I'm sorry.
Senior accountant.
Senior accountant. The four of us made up the committee. I was by default to be chairman of the insurance committee, but I've absolutely learned a lot from both presenters. And as most of you know, there was a recommendation that was sent out to all of us last week by Mr. Bobbitt. And so at this time, I know committee members have questions about the process, about how it was handled, how the recommendation was made. So Tom, I'm going to turn it over to you and Representative England too, if you have anything you'd like to add, as well as Rihanna.
Well, as you recall, this is for what we call our big policy. This is our big policy that covers basically whatever the city does insurance-wise. And it's due every February. This year we started early and we did an RFQ that was sent out, as you understand, and there were 3 responses. And those 3 responses were, I can't remember the first one, out of Birmingham, Insurance of America, I believe. We had Gallagher, Arthur J. Gallagher Risk Management Services in partnership with the independent insurance agents of Tuscaloosa, namely the Fitz Agency and Rich Moore, and also USI Inc. After those 3 were received, a committee was formed, and I was on that committee. Mr. England was on that committee, who handles claims for the city, as was Rihanna Hawken with A&F, who handles, among other things, capital assets for the city. We sat down, we looked at 3, we narrowed it to the two best proposals, we thought. We then talked to both of those respondents and offered times that they would be available if they would like to come make a presentation to the committee, selection committee. And both did, and both made very strong proposals. We gave them up to 2 hours, and after the presentations, we went and we met, and we looked at what was submitted in their initial proposal and what was presented at the presentations. And I'd like to think the committee went through this with a common sense approach, and also what is in the best interest of the city approach. And once we did that, we came to the conclusion that we felt that it was best to choose and recommend USI Inc. to the committee for this big policy.
And like I said, I was impressed with both, and mainly I was interested in. I mean, I learned a lot. About, and I look forward to maybe we all can have a little session on how important the cyber area is, especially as far as our insurance is concerned. But so we are to vote on this today, but before we do that, we have any, Mr. Fell, Councilor Fell, Councilor Busby, have any questions, and as well as the other 3 councilors who are here about the process, and more about why maybe the edge was, the recommended edge was to keep the company that we currently have now. Anybody?
So my question is, first of all, I know I've made a pain of myself getting it to this. Thank y'all for doing it. Thank that wall over there for participating in it. Tom, as we looked at this, what were the differentiators?
One of the things we looked at is experience. And not only experience just based upon the length of time a company has been in business or been writing lines of insurance, but also experience as their relationship with a particular client. And in this case, Mr. Manasco and USI had been with the city for 20 years. Been writing our policy for essentially 20 years or That association, I mean, it's just simple. They know the city so well, they know what we need, and they know what we do. They also write for AMIC. That was one of the conditions that we put in our RFQ. We preferred AMIC. We made it very clear that we preferred AMIC.
Time it, right, and this is a learning point for me. So these move up through agencies and agencies, and they ultimately reside with some risk-taking insurance company, right? Is that AMIC?
The broker,
The agents, brokers, but ultimately
yes, sir.
with somebody who's holding the risk, right?
Yes.
And that's AMIC?
That is AMIC.
And both presentations, I guess by requirement of the RFQ, had to provide that ultimate backstop through AMIC.
They did.
Check?
And
Okay.
I think one of the thing about AMIC is why, I think the council understands why we're interested in AMIC.
We're members of it.
We are members.
We're owners.
And it is not only previous councils, but this council's intent as well, that we support the league and what they do.
Okay, but that was not a
That's
distinguisher,
not a
right? Because they both ended up there.
And it was very clear in our RFQ that we wanted to know if you could write for AMIC or if you did write for AMIC.
Could
Court
if you
or did. We made it either one. And USI currently writes with AMIC, has for years. Gallagher and the other groups say that they have the potential to write for AMIC, but they do not. They are essentially, Gallagher has their offices in Atlanta, and they generally do not write or have not written policy for AMIC. So they say they have the ability, but they do not write for AMIC, but they have the ability to do it. One of the other thing is, I think their experience helps in the city, and their goal is their risk assessment for the city. Not only globally, but they can look at various departments because they know so well what the city does and our departments do. Also, that helps in the fact that in their, I think Mr. Manasco will say, that in their calculation of their premiums, because they know what we do globally, but also by departments, they can better estimate what the value of those premiums could be.
Well, another learning point for me, if you've got two competing channels, they both end up at the same place, does that mean the premiums are the same no matter which one you go through? That's not a question with agenda, that's a question of ignorance. Do they, if they both ultimately end up at the same backstop,
Yes.
does that mean the premiums will be the same?
This is a question you will need to ask.
Okay.
And the reason I'm.
Yeah.
This is the same client that
Yes,
should be.
and the reason I'm saying that is,
Should,
well, I'm gonna let Mr.
I mean, I don't know, but I would think it's
You
the
know,
same.
the difference that I think, that was just stated, I presently write with AMIC. The other party says they think they have the possibility to write with AMIC, but they don't write anything with them, so I don't know if they can get a contract to write with AMIC or not. And if
Yes, sir, but my question is, and it doesn't even have to be you and somebody else who writes through AMIC. If you're both going to the ultimate provider, does that mean the premiums would be the same no matter which of you lands the business? Again, it's not a question of the agenda, I don't know.
It does not.
It does not
No,
mean that.
It does not,
Okay.
because each broker would have to submit their own application based upon their own due diligence and investigation of what the needs are for the city. And they present that to AMIC, and then AMIC would provide a quote based upon the application that the broker submitted.
So
But the other part of that is, insurance companies are different than you go and buying a pair of shoes. Insurance companies will only work for one broker, and whichever broker is designated by the client is the only broker that insurance company will work with. So I can't go, and them go at the same time and expect to get a quote.
You both can't go to AMIC and
That
get
is
a bid,
correct.
because AMIC is only gonna
you
deal
both
with one-
can't go and
No.
get a bid from
No,
them?
they're only gonna deal with one of them, not if they were competing and you right?
That's
If both of them were competing today to bring something to us, only one of them's gonna get a quote from AMIC.
That is correct.
And they're not gonna compete against
Right.
themselves with the same person.
Yeah, no.
Carrying the line of insurance.
No, no.
I've done that in trucking a million years,
That's right.
for better and for worse.
But any difference in premium that might arise from this agency or broker and this agency or broker on the same client, that would arise out of a difference in their ability to describe the assets and the situation, is that right?
That is correct.
Because risk is risk. The price depends on how you're describing that risk and characterizing it.
In general terms, yes. You have to develop an application based upon the assets that you undertake. And what I've been able to do has been to thoroughly investigate and meet with all the different department heads, gather that information, and make sure I've gotten every asset identified with the proper information of per asset to take it to AMIC or to any other company for other lines we do besides just the major policy to get the premium that we deliver to the city.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Crowe, you have a question,
So,
or did I ask yours?
no, you did. I think the AMIC relationship is a very important piece of that whole thing, but Tommy, go back to the process a little bit. So the two people, the two competitors come in and they basically talk about what they can do, or what they are doing, what they can do, and then you guys had to evaluate either what's happening right now, where we are, or are we looking to make a change, right? So how did that conversation go with those presentations and what, because if you're trying to unseat, and I'm sorry I go back to my life in trucking, if you're going to unseat the incumbent person that you're doing insurance with, I think I told you when we talked today, I could give several reasons for me to stay with someone. I don't want to compare this to all this situation because I don't know this, but sometimes I stayed with folks for higher premiums because I knew how they paid a claim. I knew, because if I'm making truck payments and I have an accident and I know that I can get a check in 30 days from blank, and I'll throw Carolina Casualty or somebody out there that I've dealt with in the past, or I know that if I deal with blank, it might be 6 months or 8 months, right? You have to look at all different sides of this, because I don't think this is just premium driven, and that's another question I want to ask about just the dollar, because there wasn't a dollar comparison. I do think that would be a little difficult to do unless you were saying insurance to start March 1st and everybody puts on the table, here's what we think we can do, right? So that never got into the discussion, but when you were talking about I can kind of guess what I wish I had been there to see their proposal and the other one, but they would propose, here's what we're doing, here's what we can do to help you better, probably, and then the other's gonna say, here's what I can bring to the table. And I know they're a good firm too. How did that go?
Well, initially, both submitted fairly substantial proposals at the RFQ. And then we took those and we said, look, if you would like to come make a proposal to the city, not a proposal, but a presentation to the city to enhance this or say something above or below or beyond this, please come, and we'll listen to anything you have to say. And then we would correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Tyner, or any committee members, we essentially let them tell us what they could do, and what they would do, and what their experience is. We asked them questions, and we also told them some things about ourselves. Two of the big things we told them about ourselves is we're a little different than most municipalities. We have our own water and sewer system, so you're gonna have to throw in the fact that you're gonna have to be paying sewer claims and factoring those. Also, that we own our airport, that we've got liability there, that we don't have these boards and authorities on our utilities and our airport, that they're gonna have to address those. So, that's pretty much the process. It was, come tell us what you can do. And correct me if I'm wrong, that's what, and we ask questions and we listen.
So did y'all score the two? How did you determine, ultimately, did y'all just deliberate and go through the whole thing and say, well, this, did you score them? I mean,
It was basic deliberation after
Right.
that.
positives, negatives, this is what we think about this or don't?
Yes, sir.
It was very thorough, and and it was very difficult decision, I mean, especially when you're dealing with people you've known your whole lives, and have such great respect for, like Lynn Moore especially. I've worked with him so many incredible, worthwhile, wonderful projects in the work that he does, and I've got my insurance with David Fitz, with Fitz Agency, so I've got a great relationship with both of them, of those two, of the other groups, so it was one of those painful situations to be in as a council person. And, but I relied a lot too, certainly on, most on Tom and Chris and Brianna and the staff, because I don't have that daily relationship with them at all. Just certain situations. I work with Rick a lot, the tornado, of course, and situations like that, but I'm not day to day. I just happen to be on the committee by chairing this committee. So, they're the ones that really know the pros and cons more than I. But it was, I wish everyone could have, attended, because I learned, like I said, I learned a lot from both. And it was very difficult, very, very difficult position to be in.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
if you had to come up with the top 3 reasons why Mr. Manasco's firm was recommended, could you give those to us? Or Mr. Bobby, could you give us 3 top reasons what made them stand out the most?
Well, again, it's the experience. It's 20
Right.
years. Their knowledge of the city and our insurance needs globally and by department.
Right.
And also, I think that the other issue is that we have no issues with USI.
That's
I
good.
mean, they provide good service, and we had no issues.
That's good.
I've had the opportunity to talk to some of the staff, and nobody had anything, I mean, I can't, everyone I've talked to brags on the fact that our current provider has done exactly what we needed. And I heard some glowing stories about the tornado and what was done personally. And my thought is, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And it's not broke.
Yeah.
That's nothing against anybody else.
Is there any further discussion, any more questions for call for votes of the committee to pass on to the full council?
I don't have any additional questions, and again, thank you. I pressed for this. I know it was inconvenient, and I think it was the right thing to do, and I appreciate y'all doing it.
I think it was too, and I appreciate you doing that, Councilman Busby. I really do. And so, is there a motion to approve? Have a motion, have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye, and so, recommendation is approved, and we'll move for the full council on the 22nd of November, since we will not be meeting on the 15th, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion, second adjourn, all in favor say aye.
Aye.